If you've been following Cyberpunk 2077, you probably know how deadly megacorporations like Militech and Arasaka can be. Not only can corpo conflicts be waged economically, but many regimes are enforced through violence, theft, and arson. Some of these conflicts play out in smaller arenas, a gunfight in the streets of Night City, or an assassination attempt on upper management. However, if there's enough resources at play, these contained conflicts can expand into full-blown multi-corp battles. This is what we call a corporate war. Although there were 3 corporate wars prior to the 4th, obviously, the 4th corporate war played a big part in shaping the corporate, cultural, and environmental landscape of Cyberpunk's universe. Even though the war ended 50 years before the events of Cyberpunk 2077, remnants of the war are and always will be present in Night City. But before we dig into the 4th corporate war, let's take a look back at the previous corporate wars. From 2004 to 2016, corporations were involved in 3 distinct wars. Most of these conflicts were fought by security personnel and mercenaries with high-tech weaponry. The first war was between Epic Games and Apple, EBM and Orbital Air for control over the remains of the failing company, Trans World Airlines. Ultimately, Orbital Air forced EBM to surrender and they took control of Trans World Airlines' assets. Although this war only lasted from 2004 to 2006, it set a dangerous precedent for other corporations. It meant that violence and warfare were viable tactics. Many corporations beefed up their security departments when the dust settled. I say when the dust settled, but the dust from corporate warfare didn't have much time to settle. In 2006, the second corporate war kicked off. This time, the major players were 2 massive oil companies, Petrochem and Sovoil. Oil companies engaged in deceit, clandestine warfare, and underhanded tactics. That's the first time I've heard of something like that. While Petrochem did significant damage to Sovoil, it ultimately lost the battle, with Sovoil coming out on top. But the war wreaked havoc on the world. Most notably, the Southern Pacific Rim became a cesspool of pollution and oil. According to Cyberpunk 2020 Firestorm Stormfront, try saying that 5 times fast, the South China Sea became a lifeless chemical stew, all but inhabitable today. Nations and economies were destroyed in the fallout, and Sovoil was forced to pay reparations. The second corporate war was also the first time a corporation blatantly ignored governments and nations in order to secure a victory. The third corporate war played out a little differently than the last 2 due to the fact that it was mostly fought on the net. This war was between investment counselors Merrill, Asukaga, and Finch and the Rothstein Fund, a subsidiary of the Bank of New York. MANF was embezzling money from the Rothstein Fund. When the Rothstein Fund uncovered MANF's scheme, they notified the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office. MANF retaliated by launching a netrunner assault on the Rothstein Fund. A few months later, MANF left the corpses of 2 Rothstein execs on the DA's doorsteps. The Rothstein Fund dissolved shortly after. The worst was yet to come for Night City. In 2021, a German nautical tech company by the name of International Handelsmarine Act, or IHAG for short, came into some financial trouble. 2 competing nautical companies caught wind of IHAG's financial downturn, and both attempted to swoop in and take control of the sinking, pun intended, Nautical Corp. Those companies were Ocean Technology and Energy Corporation, OTEC for short, and a French company I'm not going to try to pronounce, which we'll call Sino for short. IHAG, OTEC, and Sino had been ruthless competitors for years, vying for economic dominance in marine biotechnology. When IHAG filed for bankruptcy, OTEC and Sino opened bids to acquire the company. Unfortunately, before a Sino negotiator could present a buyout offer to IHAG, she was kidnapped. I wonder who or what could have been behind that. Wasting no time at all, OTEC signed a protection security contract with Militech, a huge tech and weapons corporation that had been in competition with Arasaka for years. Of course, this caused Sino to partner up with Arasaka, the Japanese-based megacorporation. This more or less kicked off a proxy war between Militech and Arasaka. Officially, both corps are trying to sway the outcome of the IHAG takeover. Unofficially, the 2 major corporations found a reason to launch a clandestine conflict known as the Shadow War. Most of the attacks during this period consisted of assassination, theft, and net raids between Arasaka and Militech. The shadow raids didn't last long though. As the covert operations of both companies came to a head, war broke loose. Known as the Hot War, many corps and security specialists picked a side and fighting broke out in all major cities worldwide. At this point, the dispute between Sino and OTEC had been resolved, but the 2 massive security corps were just getting started. This squabble was shaping up to be much bigger than the corporate wars before it. Both sides were escalating the conflict every chance they got, investing investing heavily in weapons technology. Very few parts of the world were off limits, and entire economies, societies, and cultures suffered because of it. Most notably, in 2023, international trade collapsed. The net also suffered from the conflict. It was rife with deadly programs and dark areas thanks to Militech and Arasaka's handiwork. NetWatch, the internet police, couldn't contain the virtual damage either. Eventually, the pre-Fourth Corporate War net deteriorated and died. 2023 was also the same year that Johnny Silverhand and Solo Morgan Blackhand, along with a group of anarchists, raided the Arasaka building in Night City to destroy Arasaka's secured database. For more info on this pivotal event in Johnny's life, be sure to check out our video on Johnny Silverhand right after this. This raid didn't quite go as planned, and a nuclear device was set off, destroying central Night City and killing 750,000 people. It's unclear who detonated the nuke. Some believe it was Arasaka to protect corporate secrets, while others believe it to be Militech. Finally, the United States government stepped in and nationalized Militech, forcing Arasaka out of the United States. With Militech at her back, US President Elizabeth Kress used this as an opportunity to take full control of the government and reunify the United States. Of course, the Free State of Northern California was uninterested in reunification. Due to Northern California's disobedience, Kress did not aid Night City in its reconstruction efforts. And this brings us to the time of the Red, but we'll save that for another video. The Fourth Corporate War was a wake-up call for the world. Although governments and nations still existed, it became apparent that corporations were calling the shots. Allegiances didn't lie in world leaders or countries, but in Arasaka or Militech. And of course, I'm sure we'll see more of this bitter rivalry between Militech and Arasaka in Cyberpunk 2077. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Cyberpunk Lore. Be sure to check back every Saturday for a new episode, and if there's something you'd like us to discuss, leave it in the comments below, or you can drop me a line on Twitter. See you next time.